This is you without Collaborator. Invisible, just another seagull. And this is you with Collaborator. Get noticed in the AI era.
Online visibility is not luck, it's a strategy. Combine SEO, digital PR, and content distribution to grow. Visit adz.com to learn more.
Wix Studio, one end-to-end web creation platform for your agency to deliver exceptional work with absolute efficiency.
Good afternoon, everybody. As you heard, I'm Sarah Barker, and I'm a performance strategist at Kinesso. So Kinesso, for any of you who don't know us, we are the performance engine at the heart of IPG. And as you've heard, we have had one or two talks on the topic of AI today, but I really wanted to zone in on what it means specifically for paid search. But before we do this, I just wanted to give you a bit of a flavor, a little bit about me. Otherwise, what you're about to see might feel a little bit random. I am really into sci-fi and fantasy books. Any Brandon Sanderson fans, give me a shout after this talk track. I also absolutely love retro TV and movies. Cannot wait for Stranger Things. Obviously, Back to the Future is the GOAT. And this is my dog, Fenton. Anyone who works with me knows that I find a way to get him into every single introduction. And yes, we did name him after that YouTube video. I also started out in paid search back in 2014, when the search results looked a little bit like this. And at the time, we felt like there was a lot of change. Does anyone in here remember when the big yellow box around the sponsored ads disappeared, and then there was the drama of the right-hand side ads disappearing as well? At the time, they felt big, but in the context of what we're seeing today, they're probably quite minor. We're now really at that point of a search evolution. We've now moved from this age of search engines into an age of answer engines, where there's much less pressure on us to employ our critical thinking, where we're not having to click back and forth between all of those different blue links in order to compare and contrast that information in order to find the products that we're looking for. Instead, the answers are given to us in the palm of our virtual hands. And this has some really big implications for brands, right? We've heard a lot about it today. We're seeing that decrease in traffic because we're getting those answers right there. We're not having to click through. But when we think about this from a paid media perspective as well, we're seeing cost inflation because more people are competing for less traffic. And also, in some cases, for some brands, they're seeing this as an existential threat, particularly those that are in the market of information aggregation. So brands absolutely need to adapt right now in order to overcome some of the risks that I've spoken about, but also it's an opportunity, right, to get ahead of the competition, to start to steal share, and to ultimately grow. But we also have to understand that this change is happening quickly, right? It's exponential growth that we're seeing at the moment. And if we're realistic, we're probably only here on this curve of adoption and innovation. So if we hold these two things to be true, that this change is happening really quickly, but we know we need to adapt. How do we know what we need to do? How do we know what the future of paid search is likely to look like? Well, that is the question that I'm going to answer here today from my opinion. And we may not have all the answers, right? It's a little bit further behind what we can do from an organic perspective at the moment to optimize for LLMs. But what we can do is start to level up based on those predictions that we can make today. And I'm going to talk through 3 individual stages, starting with our easy mode. So this is all around Google's AI transformation, particularly important, right, in Q4 in the UK, because we're expecting to see those sponsored results in AI overviews within AI mode, so we need to be prepared for this. Next, onto our medium difficulty. So this is where we're going to start to see the proliferation of platforms tomorrow, particularly when the likes of ChatGPT starts to have their own advertising model. And then finally, onto our hard mode. This is when we see the rollout of everyday agentic AI, because this is really going to change the way that PPC looks and feels. But before we get onto that, let's start on easy, Google's AI transformation. And what I mean by this is the rise in AI in their search experiences. So we've heard it, right? It's all about their AI overviews and AI mode. But it's combined from a paid media perspective with a rise in AI in their search operations. So we're seeing PMax, we're seeing AI Max. And these two things are symbiotic, right? The operations and the experiences. The more we see them lean into AI in their experiences, the more we're going to have to lean into AI in those operations. If we get to a point where AI mode is that default, well, then maybe is AI Max going to have to be that default too? And that's because these experiences are fundamentally changing the way that people search. They're becoming more complex, longer in terms of these queries that they're searching for. So even if Google wasn't mandating it, that we have to use PMax, Broad, AI Max, in order to appear in these placements, I can't realistically imagine a scenario where we weren't leaning in AI to do this. So hopefully everybody is leaning into AI and automation already, but for any of those laggards, you're doomed to miss out in terms of these new placements if we're not adopting it today. But this also doesn't mean that we just completely hand over all of the power to AI and the algorithms. We need to actually fuel, not follow those algorithms. And we do this by inputting high-quality inputs. And those inputs absolutely have to be holistic. So if you think about AI Max, for example, we have our base keywords, our base copy, and our base URLs. The algorithm then goes away, uses all of these three things in order to find new relevant keywords, to create new relevant ad copy, and to find the most relevant URL from within our website. So on the one hand, this is great, right? As PPC specialists, it encourages us to think about growth, to be oriented towards growth, but also to encourage us to have those really personalized, seamless experiences. But on the other hand, it also shifts our responsibility as PPC specialists. We heard about it earlier, actually, to think beyond what we're doing within Google Ads itself. We need to have that level of responsibility for having high-quality, creative copy and landing pages. So for many of you, this is what holistic search will now look like. And within those teams that we work with, within those content teams, within those experience teams, you guessed it, they can also use AI to make their own optimizations more efficient, more effective. But I'm not saying we all go away tomorrow and start using AI to create all of our creative, all of our landing pages. We are going to have some Will Smith eating spaghetti moments, if anyone gets that reference. Instead, we just need to get these tools into the hands of our specialists so that they can use them in a way that really enhances their work. So one thing that we're doing at Kinesso a lot is utilizing AI to validate our landing pages, to validate our creative before they even go live. So we understand exactly how they'll perform and why. So those optimizations happen before activation so that we're maximizing the value then of every penny spent. So hopefully some of this should feel familiar. This is easy mode. It's not too complicated. What are the power-ups that we should all be leveraging at this point in time in order to succeed? Well, as I said, we should all be leaning into those AI campaign types because they do have that symbiotic relationship with showing up in AI experiences. So we need to lean into them to succeed tomorrow. We also, if we're not already, we need to be better connecting our teams across our paid search teams, into our experience teams, and into our content teams. Because what this then allows us to do is to optimize those assets in a much more holistic way, thinking about the quality of our creative, the quality of our landing pages. Perfect. We've passed easy mode. We're now onto our medium difficulty, where we're thinking about the proliferation of platforms. And here I'm going to give you a scenario. So imagine you're selling colored hair shampoo. You have a lot of search platforms now that we need to think about. We have our old reliable friends, the search engines, Google, Microsoft, that we absolutely cannot forget about. But also, we're probably already thinking about commerce or retail search, right? We're probably investing in Amazon, Tesco, Boots, even some of our newer players at the moment, like Deliveroo. Then, we know that particularly amongst our younger demographics, they're utilizing social platforms as search engines. So we're probably also thinking about what's happening from a search perspective on TikTok and YouTube. And now on top of that, we've got to think about our answer engines, our chat GPTs and so on. It's a lot. And to make matters more complicated, all of these, except ChatGPT and Claude at the moment, have some form of advertising opportunity. Of course, it's at varying levels of maturity and accessibility, but it's still a lot of places, right, for us to start thinking about investing our time and budget. And I am yet to meet the brand who has unlimited resources, unlimited budgets, so we can't just go about spreading that budget evenly across everything. We need to be a bit more considered. We also can't just go full-on Leroy Jenkins and start going for every single new platform that comes our way, because we don't necessarily, if our time is worth it, we don't yet know if there's that commercial return. So we need to think about those media planners and first start to identify where our audience is searching today, utilizing tools, right, like GWI. So what platforms are they using? Does it differ by our different audience segments? What does it differ by the stage in the funnel? What specifically are they searching for? And what actions are they taking? Because this really helps us to understand the size of the prize and understand if there is that commercial opportunity there. So then we can make more informed decisions about whether current opportunities, current ad capabilities are right for our brands. So take Perplexity, for example, right? They're already starting to roll out an advertising model. It just looks slightly different to what we're seeing from a Google perspective. So they're looking at their primary product being sponsored follow-up questions, and they're working on a CPM model rather than a CPC. So that's really interesting for us as PPC specialists, because it means we're not just thinking about traffic, about clicks, but we're also assessing what are those additional valuable outcomes for our business. But perhaps our person selling the coloured hair shampoo doesn't think that the Perplexity audience is right for them today. Instead, they're waiting for the B that we all know is happening, right? When ChatGPT starts to introduce their own advertising. How do we prepare for this? Because it's going to be huge for our industry. Well, we can start to get some ideas, right, by looking at what answers look like today for commercial terms. And they're a mixture of product cards and product text, both of which we could probably imagine sponsored results existing within. So if we do start to see sponsored products within it, then of course our feed is going to be super, super important. We need to make sure that it is fully optimized, that it is accessible by those LLMs. So we need to pump it with all of that amazing information that we know people are looking for. So is my product vegan? Is it good for sensitive skin? Is it good for dyed hair? And so on. We can also imagine those results existing within text as sponsored text ads, right? And I'd imagine here it'll be a very similar model to that which we're seeing from Google, where we're not kind of uploading that very manual, rigid keyword list, and instead it's going to scrape that information dynamically from our websites. So the learning here is that we really need to start researching what those relevant semantic topics are today and optimizing our website accordingly. So this is the place for it, right? We need to speak to our SEO counterparts. Because we can no longer manage search in isolation. It's all part of this very interconnected, unified search ecosystem. And I realize this slide is a bit of an eyesore, but it is very complex. So let's break it down a little bit, because all of these different facets are really starting to influence each other. Within each of them, we've got our organic, and if we can improve the performance there, it reduces the reliance on paid. But paid is obviously providing that incremental traffic, those incremental conversions on top of organic. Social, it's starting to make its way into other search platforms. We're already seeing it, right, with short videos, with forums being surfaced in Google. But now those short videos as well, they're coming into AI search as well, into ChatGPT. But it's more than that here, because social mention, social sentiment is directly impacting whether we show up in AI search and how we show up as well. And then we can't forget e-com or retail as well. We saw it a second ago. Those product cards, that product information is directly pulling from those retailers' websites into platforms like ChatGPT. And in the future, we've seen the news, right? You might even be able to check out directly within the ChatGPT platform, and that information gets fed back into the retailer. So it's very complex, and to make things even more tricky, often I find that these different facets are managed by different departments or teams within businesses, particularly in those big matrix organizations. So I've been spending a lot of my time recently speaking to these brands and helping them with more of their operational transformation, because they need to ensure that they have often new roles and responsibilities, both agency side and on the client side or in-house, where we have that person who's responsible for the coordination of all of these different areas. So it's getting a little bit more tricky. We're at medium mode. What do we need to do here? What are our power-ups? Well, as I said, the first thing is to monitor where your audience is searching today. Understand what the likely commercial opportunity is going to be for you from each of these platforms before jumping in. And if it's right for you, we can then start to experiment with those current capabilities. If not, we can sit back, prepare for what we think those likely inputs are going to be when new platforms start to monetize that inventory. It's probably going to be our feed. It's probably going to be our website. So medium completed. We're now on to hard, our boss mode, although I am under no illusion that this will probably be the final boss. And this is where we're talking about everyday agentic AI, when people are adopting this as the norm. And what I mean by this is that agents will then perform tasks. They're not just answering questions, they're taking those actions. And I wanted to explore this by utilizing a ChatGPT agent together. So this is my personal shopping assistant. I've told it here that I want it to find me the best colored hair shampoo from across UK retailers. I want the best one for within my £20 budget, considering that I dye my hair and it's damaged. I also want the product to arrive within 3 days. So there's a lot to digest there. The agent's going to go away, break apart my query in order to find all of that relevant information across the open web in order to find the right product and the retailer, actually in this case, that meets my specifications. You'll notice here that it's also searching for cruelty-free. I didn't put that in my query, but because it is very memory-driven, it already knew that about me, about my previous interactions, so that's factored in as well when recommending the results. It's then going to consolidate that in order to make its recommendation. And in this instance, I actually asked it for a PowerPoint presentation of my results. Admittedly, it's a terrible PowerPoint presentation, but it's a PowerPoint presentation nonetheless. And I'm not suggesting that agents are going to go away and encourage us all to start creating PowerPoint presentations for very basic queries. That's very unlikely to happen. I'm just obviously working within the confines of what these agents can do today. But imagine instead when that output is the agent buying that product for me, when it's booking that table, when it's making that conversion on my behalf. This is very different, right? Because now we're moving from an era when that journey is still very user-owned, because with answer engines today, it is back and forth, it is that conversation where we get those personalized responses in response to our queries, and it is very much answer-based. But then we're moving to an era where it is more agent-owned. They're managing that, right? All the way from the point of discovery into a purchase. It's also memory-driven. It knew those things about me from before, and it's probabilistic. It'll predict what I want next in order to give me those advanced outputs to complete tasks, to complete actions. So my big question to you today is, where will paid search fit into this journey? Because it's really different, right? Some of you might say, Sarah, no, it will all be the same. People are always going to want that autonomy at the point of purchase. They're going to want to make that decision, and therefore they'll still see those ads at the point of purchase in order to click and choose their product. Others of you who are more leaned into agents might think that in this case, when they're covering that entire journey through to purchase, well, then maybe paid search ads are going to have to be designed agent first moving forward. Maybe the user's never going to see them at all. There's a lot of unknowns. We're taking a lot of steps ahead. I don't think any of us could answer that today with certainty. So in this case, how do we power up for the complete unknown? The best advice I could give to you guys today would to become an agent power user within your everyday life, outside of work, because in understanding how agents work, that'll give us kind of a head start when they start to introduce sponsored advertising into these places. We can start to predict it. My personal favorite is utilizing agents as a reading assistant, but I know some of my colleagues use it for things like personal shopping, meal planning, home design, and so on. So that's it, not so hard, right? Powering up for the AI age. What are those things that we need to be thinking about today, just to summarize? So today, we absolutely need to, from a Google perspective, be leaning into those AI campaign types to ensure that we're showing up in those AI experiences. Tomorrow, thinking about advertising in platforms like ChatGPT, we can start optimizing those likely inputs today, like our shopping feed, like our website. And then finally, in order to prepare for the future of AI, of search, which is going to be driven by agents potentially, when we make that shift from answers into actions, we can absolutely become those agent power users so we can spot where those opportunities might be. So, are we ready? Thank you. If you want to download any of the presentations, steal the charts, or just see Fenton again, we do have our QR code here. Thank you.
Wait, do you want free ice cream, or do you want to know the latest in how search behaviour is changing? If it's the latter, download Search Pulse by Reflect Digital. Get that now.
Monthly reporting making you want to shove sharp things up your nose? Try Dragon Metrics, the all-in-one SEO software with mind-blowing reporting tools.
You've got two blind spots, keyword rankings and LLM visibility. Now, most tools solve one, but AccuRanker solves both. See how at booth number 18.
Demand Sphere. Limitless visual insights from the SERPs. Unlimited dashboards and users. Easy to use and easy to scale your growth to new levels.